You're welcome to the Economy and Politics Show. I am Ottoabasi, Abasiekong. This edition will discuss Nigeria's pathway to sustainable and inclusive economic growth. Joining me virtually for this conversation is Dr. Franklin Ngwu. He's the Director, Public and Private Sector Initiative in Lagos Business School and also an Associate Professor of Corporate Governance, Risk Management and Strategy. It's nice to have you on the program, Dr. Franklin Ngwu.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Let me begin quickly with the third quarter 2023 GDP growth that was released by National Bureau of Statistics last week. It showed that Nigeria grew by 2.54% from 2.51% from second quarter 2023. But the major story from there was that the services sector was the major driver of the growth figure, contributing 52.70% to aggregate GDP. So my question is it safe to say Nigeria is a services-driven economy at this point?
I think the first thing we are supposed to look at first is the GDP growth of 2.5 something percent. Is that where we're supposed to be? The answer is no. Remember that our population growth is about 2.6 or 2.7. So if your population is growing more than your GDP, I'm sure you understand or appreciate the consequences of that, in the sense that it means that more people will go into poverty. It means that there will be more unemployment. It means that there will be almost all the key indicators will be going negative, because it means that there are more people requiring services, requiring infrastructure, requiring medicals, requiring education. We are not growing as we are supposed to grow. Also, it means that if we are growing 2.51% or 2.5 something percent, and we are projecting that by next year we're going to grow 3 point something, we are talking about giants of Africa growing at 3 point something. Interestingly, just a few days ago, there was a report indicating the 20 top economies that are projected that will grow fast in 2024. 12 economies in that list are African countries, including Niger, Libya, Senegal, and other countries. The question that if some of them are growing at 7%, 11%, 6%, 7%, and we are growing at 2.51 and hoping to grow 3 point something, I'm sure you can see that the gap is much. And we're talking about the giant of Africa. So if you look at the potentials we have, and remember that this is a 200 million economy, 200 million people economy, with all the resources, with all the human and natural resources that we have, we should not be talking about growing at 3% or 2%, as the case may be. We should be growing at a minimum of 7, 8, 9, 10%, because we have what all it takes to do that. What is lacking is the necessary policies, necessary reform, necessary coordination of these policies, and properly the right leadership to properly execute to achieve what we are supposed to achieve.
Now, I know that you have expertise in strategy, and of course, you've had some background in development economics. So let's look at the developments in Nigeria. The oil sector has been our primary revenue earner, and this last quarter GDP report shows that it recorded an average of 1.45 million barrels per day in terms of production, an improvement from 1.22 million barrels per day, but not in that level where we expect it to be, like 1.7 million barrels per day. What are your thoughts on Nigeria's strategy to ramp up crude oil production? You have seen promises that we may start that domestic refining from the Port Harcourt refinery by end of this year. We're hoping that happens. But generally, even PROSHA has written about addressing the issues of crude oil theft. Do you see strategy to address the crude oil theft issues and ramp up production in the oil and gas sector while we look at diversifying other sources of revenue in the country?
I think that efforts to increase oil production is good, but is it good enough? I think we can do a lot better. Remember, there was a time Nigeria, we are producing almost 2 million barrels. From 2 million, it's gone down to below 1 million. From below 1 million, we are back now to above 1 million. And we are now doing about 1.2 or 1.3, as the case may be, now hoping to move to 1.4 or 1.7. So in answer to the question is to why did we go down from where we were before to below 1 million. It means that there has been a governance failure. It means that there has been a management failure. It means that there has been a sustainability failure. And it means that there has been an inclusion failure. So these are issues that we are supposed to look at. As I said, looking at it on paper, on face, you might say, oh, this is good that we are now increasing our production. But remember that this fall in production also has its multiple consequences in terms of our revenue, in terms of our borrowing, in terms of our infrastructure development, in terms of our GDP growth, as the case may be. So while we commend, support, and encourage, and even hope that the government will do whatever is required to sustain the security in Niger Delta, to also bring the people in an kind of inclusive government and economy, we believe that they can do a lot more. Somebody was saying that if we look at what is in the gas sector, that is the gas subsector, not now oil, that it will even dwarf what we are doing in oil sector, in oil subsector. So it means that even if we look at the oil and gas as a sector and do what we are supposed to do, we shouldn't be in this position. It means that we should be producing. Imagine if we are at 1 point something now, we've removed subsidy, and we are at 1.2 or 1.3. Imagine if we move to 1.7 or 1.8 or even 2 million. Imagine the impact on it's going to have on the economy, on the revenue, as the case may be. Remember that as at last month, they said we are owing about 81 or something trillion naira. It means that our next year's budget, we are going to borrow 7 point something trillion. So what that suggests to you that if we do what we are supposed to do in oil and also in gas, which is actually highly demanded now across the world, particularly in Europe, it means that we should do a lot better. So while the strategy is improving small, I believe that we can do a lot better. We cannot move from close to 2 million to below 1 million, and now we're at 1.2 or 1.3, and we are now saying, oh, we are doing well. We are not doing well, because the consequence of this failure, we are seeing it across the country. Poverty is increasing, inequality is increasing, unemployment is increasing, insecurity is increasing. And that's why we have and of course, corruption also increasing as well. So we need to do more, as I keep saying, as giants of Africa.
So this administration targets a $1 trillion GDP in the next 7 years. And it's quite interesting. I want to see from your perspective, is it too ambitious or is it realistic? And what sectors do you believe, top 5 sectors, can really drive this? Also, I want to know from your perspective, financialization of our assets. You know that the Ministry of Finance Incorporated has been reconstituted, the board has been reconstituted. We have, according to the managing director of MOFI, Dr. Armstrong Takan, we have assets valued at about 100 trillion naira. If we really go through the securitization process and all that, shouldn't that be something that should be an anchor for this government? Because at this time, we really need to unlock every area that brings value to our economy.
Let me start from the first question in terms of the 1 trillion economy. Is it too ambitious? Is it too low? I believe that Nigeria is supposed to be more than 1 trillion economy, given what we have and what we can achieve. So I'll give you an example. Okay, and you also asked me about the sectors that can drive this. So I'm sure we read, is a public knowledge. I think Malaysia, Indonesia made about 12 point something billion dollars from 2 products, palm oil and coconut. So if these economies can make 12 point something billion dollars from 2 agricultural products, and these are products that we have a natural advantage or competitive advantage in. So, and there's also another report that says that 80% of palm trees that we have in Nigeria were planted by birds and rats. So it means that there is no conscious effort to even look at these important areas. So if you look at agriculture alone, I said now an economy made 12 point something billion dollars from 2 products. So you can convert 12 point something billion dollars and know what it will give you in naira. So what I'm trying to say is that even if we focus on agriculture, we can achieve a $1 trillion economy. Remember also that other countries in the world, like Denmark, how much are they making from pork? These other countries, how much are they making from orange? you can do an assessment of what different countries are making from agriculture. Nigeria is nowhere. In all the key agricultural exports, Nigeria is not even among the top 10 or among the, I think Kenya or Ethiopia makes about $1 million from exporting flour to UK and Europe. I'm talking about flour of I love you or I hate you, or as the case may be. So there are a lot of opportunities. Other sector that can help to drive this is manufacturing. I was in South Africa and they asked us they were asking, where is Nigeria with regards to, are we in first industrial revolution? Are we in second? Are we in third? Are we in fourth? And it was a World Economic Forum workshop in South Africa. And somehow people agreed that we are not even sure if we are in first industrial revolution, a giant of Africa. So it means that, of course, in first industrial revolution is that we are more or less at the basic industrialization of focusing on agriculture, basic manufacturing, basic things to export. So it means that even if we focus on basic manufacturing, target agriculture, manufacturing, transportation, which includes aviation, health, IT, 1 trillion should be easily achieved because we have the potential, we have all it takes to achieve what $1 trillion economy. With regards to the financialization, as you talked about, there is this book by Hernando Soto in terms of the debt capital. That's if you go through it, you find out that, I mean, what they are saying is true, that we have a lot of debt capital in Nigeria. Even if you look at, let's assume that we agree and say all state governments, all the governors, let's have a meeting and say all lands in Nigeria should be properly surveyed and certified in terms of C of O. And these documents can now be functionalized, can now be used as collateral, can now be used as to get a loan in the bank. You can imagine what we can achieve. Niger State has about 76,000 square kilometers of land. So imagine what we can do with Niger State, what we can do in the southeast, what we can do in the south, what we can do in the north, what we can do in the northeast. So in terms of this functionalization, it's something that is staring us in the face. You can't even, so many people cannot do anything because they don't have the right assets to trade. Why the assets are just dead, it's not being used, and poverty keeps increasing. So the financialization by the CEO of Murphy is in order, and we can achieve a lot. Let's even look at government assets that are not properly being used. A well example is the old secretariat in Lagos that has been lying down fallow in a prime location like Ikoyi. You know what that place can be? We can turn it into an innovation hub. And all kinds of ideas will be coming up there, and kind of revenue can be generated from there. And that is how it is littered across the 36 states of Nigeria. So that's why I keep emphasizing that we can really achieve a lot more in Nigeria. If we look at the resources that we have, if we look at the potentials that we have, I mean, the country is too blessed to be talking about poverty, to be talking about 1 trillion economy, to be talking about this as the case may be. I was in UK about a few months ago, and I tried to buy a bottle of cashew, and a bottle of cashew in Nigeria is about 3,000. In UK, it's about £10. So you can see the gap of what we can do and what we can export to UK as the case may be. So there are lots we can do with regards to moving the dead assets to fertilize it, and also looking at the key sectors of the economy like agriculture, manufacturing, transport, health, education, to achieve a lot. See nursing, for example, see teachers, for example, see IT people, for example. These are skills that are globally in high demand. Nigeria can be a source of supply to the global economy. Some of them can even stay in Nigeria and be working at any foreign exchange and bring it to Nigeria, and the economy can be expanding. So we can do a lot given the potential that we have in Nigeria.
Definitely. I like the last part where you talked about us being a driver of human capital and exporting services, which of course was the first conversation we had. Services is driving the economy, so we can really be effective. And let's look at the speech of the central bank governor, Mr. Laimi Cardoso, last Friday at the 58th annual bankers dinner organized by the Challenge of Bankers of Nigeria. Take one quote where he said, with continued tightening measures for the next 2 quarters, they're going to manage inflation effectively. So I want to ask you, of course, we have a trilemma of inflation, of interest rates, of exchange rates. does the CBN have that tool, that capacity to really address inflation in tightening in next 2 quarters? What should be the priority of the central bank governor in terms of this trilemma of interest rate, inflation, and exchange rates? You may want to add unemployment too, if it's number 4.
Of course, CBN's primary responsibility is to maintain price stability and inflation. However, some of these things work through a combination of not monetary policy, fiscal policy, and supply side policy. So the CBN can do the much they can within the monetary policy space, which they have control of. But what is now required is how do we create a proper synergy between from monetary policy to fiscal policy, or from fiscal policy to monetary policy, and then supply side policy. So I'll just use a particular example. If you look at what is really causing inflation, food inflation is a key component of what is causing inflation. So can CBN control food inflation? Not really, because it's about production, demand, and supply. So what is now required is that synergy between the monetary policy and the fiscal policy to say, okay, if food inflation is one of the key components of inflation that we have in Nigeria, what do we do from the fiscal side to increase food supply? One of them will be improving the security of lives and property to reduce insecurity. That is outside the purview of the CBN. And then if security improves, the government can answer also from the fiscal side and from the supply side and say, okay, how do we ensure proper evacuation and storage and distribution of food products across the country? Because I'm using my village as an example in Ngwu. Trucks coming from the north to the east and to south, and even some of them sleep in my village for 1 week because the road is very, very bad. And of course, if a truck of tomato is moving from the north, passing through Enugu, going to Abia or going to Rivers, in 1 week, the tomato is bad and you can't use it again. Another one comes. So these are, and of course, the available tomato, maybe in Port Harcourt, maybe in Lagos, the price will now go up, maybe from 2,000 to 3,000. I think last week they said it was now about 7,000, as the case may be. So that is really inflation. So if we're able to tackle issue of insecurity, tackle issue of transportation, that is the supply side aspect of it, evacuation, distribution, and storage, it means that food prices production will go up, supply will increase, and naturally price will start coming down. So while we hope and support and that CBN can do the much they can do within their space, I think that what is more important is how to complement the efforts from the physical side and from the supply side. Most of the time in Nigeria, we ignore the supply side policies in Nigeria. We normally focus more on the fiscal policy and the monetary policy, but there's a supply side. Just to give you an example, if a lorry is moving and entering a state or even on the express, you see all kinds of groups stopping the lorry, trying to say you have to pay duty, you have to pay this levy, you have to pay that. Before you know it, the lorry enters a bad road, there's a pothole, the lorry falls down. And so all those things are supply side issues that need to be properly handled to enable the supply to come. And for us, when the supply comes and the demand is not increasing or demand is even increasing, the price will start coming down as long as the supply is higher than the demand. So that is basic economics. So we support CBN, we pray for CBN, we hope that they will do well, but that synergy is very, very important from monetary to physical and the supply side policies.
Yeah, I mean, what you just said now is very important. Apart from the fiscal and monetary policy alignments, the supply side is something that we need to look at seriously to ensure that everything is synergized to achieve an inclusive economy, which is really needed at this trying and challenging time. Thank you very much, Dr. Franklin Ngwu, taking out of your busy schedule as a lecturer at Lagos Business School to have this conversation. Associate Professor of Corporate Governance, Risk Management, and of course, Strategy, and also Director of Public Sector and Private Sector Initiative in Lagos Business School. Thank you once again for the time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Thank you.
To our viewers, if you want to get further insights on this conversation, visit the ProShare website displayed on the screen. Also follow the WebTV social media platforms to engage further on this show. Till we come your way again, enrich yourself with the knowledge of socioeconomic developments around you because it's the wise thing to do. I'm Ottoabasi, Abasiekong. Thank you for watching and bye for now.